Hello and welcome everyone to our session, and thank you for joining. My name is Dwight Akins. I'm a strategic account executive at Zeppelin, and I'm thrilled to be here with Justina from US Bank. Today, we're going to be learning from Justina as she shares her experiences around leading the design of talech's first mobile point of sale app during the pandemic in 2020. And without further ado, I'd love to have you introduce yourself, Justina.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. My name is Justina Ampofo. I'm a product designer and I lead design for native iOS and Android point of sale applications at US Bank talech.
Thank you, Justina. I think it would be really fun for us to learn more about you as we jump in. I'd love to ask if you could summarize the last few years of your career into just one word, what would that be and why?
If I could summarize it into one word, I'd say it's been an adventure. I've had the opportunity to do things that many designers don't get to do. Thinking back to just coming out of college and now, what's been great about working with US Bank within its subsidiaries is that they've created an environment where we're encouraged to take initiative and bring new ideas to the table and follow through with them. I've worked on products from the ground up with other talented designers and PMs and developers, having strategic discussions and exploring designs and even dabbling into other design areas like writing user guides and help content. So having the space and the autonomy and the ability to challenge and change things has been incredible.
Hmm. I'm really curious. What is talech and who is it for?
So talech is a point of sale app that caters to the restaurant, retail, and service industries when merchants need to perform tasks for their businesses like taking payments or creating orders or booking appointments, managing employees and customers. We provide the software that allows them to do that.
Okay, so this is where the journey began. Can you take us back to 2020 and where you started from?
Yeah, I started with talech in 2019 when it was just a startup that had gotten acquired by US Bank. At that time, talech had only one native point of sale, which was talech Register, and that was a countertop tablet solution for brick and mortar businesses. And I was brought on to the team to lead design for the first release of talech Mobile, which is talech's native mobile point of sale application. And this was during the pandemic in 2020. We were a small team back then, just geographically dispersed between Atlanta and Palo Alto. And it was a really unique time for us. And we were also seeing a lot of changes in the industry at that time as well.
It sounds like a lot was happening at this time. You had just joined the org, the industry was shifting, you're getting ready to launch an app. I'm really curious to learn what were the challenges you faced and how were you able to address them?
Yeah, so there were two really big areas where we were seeing changes happen, which was in the industry, in the payments industry, and also in consumer behavior. We all remember how the pandemic led to the shutdowns of many businesses in this restaurant, retail service industries, the core verticals of talech's business. And at the time, the market was also shifting in new ways. Like a majority of new businesses or new business applications in 2020 were retail businesses. So not your traditional brick and mortar stores, but operating online with a social media presence. And the majority of merchants using talech Mobile fall under this retail vertical. There was also a growth in the number of smaller entrepreneurs that we call micro merchants. So think of your hairstylists, contractors, food trucks, vendors, the majority of their business being lower value transactions, beginning to operate in this digital first environment. And when it came to the consumers, we were seeing a lot of safety concerns. So there were safety concerns around person-to-person interactions, which bled into payments as well. It really, really led to this rapid adoption of contactless payments. And we saw a lot of consumers that wouldn't shop at businesses that didn't offer a contactless way to pay. And in that time, it also led to a growth in e-commerce and digital payments. It's all growth that we would have seen take about half a decade to get to, happening rapidly within 1 year. So the combination of all of these things really gave us a lot to work with and pay attention to.
Wow. It sounds like you were able to clearly identify not only a changing trend, but also this unique user group. I'm really curious, what were some of the goals that you put in place to help address not only the launch, but this newly defined user group?
Yes, talech had three goals for the mobile app launch. So talech Mobile was supposed to be a solution purposely built for these micro merchants, suited to the size of their business, flexible and contactless payment options, really this compact on the go solution. And we also had to build it using the technical capabilities of talech Register, which I mentioned earlier, that tablet point of sale that already had all of this POS functionality on a larger, more robust scale. And also to get talech Mobile out to the market within a year. So when the team came together in 2019, we worked at this record pace and released the MVP in October of 2020.
That sounds like a very rigorous deadline in and of itself. What was really at stake for US Bank? Why launch within the year? I think it'd be great for us to understand what the team had to address in that timeline.
Right. So it was about having a complete product offering. When businesses start out and they look for financial backing, they pick usually a bank to support that business. And when customers choose to bank with US Bank for their business, it was important to offer a product solution that could also support their business. With talech being US Bank's product arm for small businesses, there wasn't that solution that was providing software for the smaller micro merchants. And so it was important that we close that hole in our product offering within the year and have a solution that captured this user base.
And all of this happening while within the constraints of the financial services industry.
Yes, FinServe is challenging. When talech was acquired, it was a fintech startup moving into financial services under US Bank, which had more structure and rigor and processes accounting for things like compliance and accessibility. So as we started to transition and build in those checks and balances, there was a sweet spot in that transition where we could take advantage of the in-between and move with fewer constraints given the pressure to get to the market so quickly. And also, I emphasize how small of a team that we had doing this. We didn't have a UX researcher on the team, so we couldn't test everything to the best of our abilities like we wanted to. So we had to watch for these design quality issues while getting things quickly out there and learning from it.
Those are formidable challenges. How did you choose where to start?
Where to start? I ask myself this question daily as I was designing for talech Mobile, and it really was, how do we meet our customer needs using the technical capabilities that we already have? And how do I make sure that we're making thoughtful design decisions that set the right foundation for the future? So to guide that decision-making process, I used a three-step approach. And the very first thing was to identify whatever change we were dealing with at the time. If it was an environmental or industry change, if it was a design pattern change, if it was a process or system change, and also apply a guiding principle to it. So for me, the three big ones were user centricity, like who are we making this for, thinking about scalability for the product now and in the future, and also portability, as we were supporting a lot of different platforms between iOS and Android, and picking that change response. So whether it was going in a completely different direction based on the change that we were seeing, if it was adjusting and just tweaking a couple of things, or if we were onto something and staying the course. And it's how I framed conversations with the team and guided us towards a consensus.
I want to make sure I understand the process correctly. Step one, identify the change. Step two, pick at least one guiding principle for your actions. And step three, choose the change response. And I'm excited to hear how the framework is operating in action. Do you have some examples that you can share with us?
Yes, I do. The MVP, defining talech's mobile MVP, is a really good example of us using this. And when it came to identifying what that change was, the question there was, how do we build talech mobile in comparison to talech register? So there were a lot of product brainstorms on what talech mobile should be. In the beginning, it was, is this a companion device for the register? Is it a pocket-sized version of it? Is it an area where business owners can come and look at reports or check on the health of their business? And with all of these ideas floating around, my guiding principle had to be user centricity. And the pull to go in all these other directions was strong, but bringing it back to the micro merchant, their growing numbers and the changing behaviors, the response there was to stay the course and really hone in on the needs of the micro merchant. And the time frame that we were working with also forced us to build simply and concisely and also focus on this group. And when we shipped our MVP, there really was just a limited feature set that we took out of the door, which focused on the most important features of the app. So it was simply taking payments. There was a basic item creation in comparison to register, having all these different item types that you could create. It was simply just the name and the price. It was having a limited set of views and a limited settings. So really, the mobile app was designed to meet that immediate need of the micro merchant, which was having their products, selling their products, and getting paid for them.
This makes me curious about more complex setups like information architecture. Does your framework fit for something like that?
Yes, so the information architecture was a part of the app where I spent a lot of time on, and the principle there as well was user centricity. So early iterations for talech mobile were leaning towards this more modular design framework, and the thought there was, we're still learning about this user group. Why don't we give them access to all of these feature sets, let them customize what's most important, and we can learn from these choices. My response there was to pivot away from customization and instead lean towards a contextual task grouping experience. And the reason here was because micro merchants typically only use a specific subset of related actions. and they take those actions consecutively, not simultaneously. So, for example, it's not typical for them to go into managing a customer in the middle of a sale, although they might add a customer to that sale. So, instead of having a navigational pattern that would create an entire path, it was really about presenting the actions that were relevant to the current task and focus on completing that task.
That's right. Now that your MVP is out in the market and there's demand for more features and functionality, how do you deal with that?
Yes. So talech Mobile was a baby when we first created it, in the sense that we knew that it would grow and take on new form, and it would have been convenient to use the same designs and code for both register and mobile, but it really had to be about scalability and thinking about this mobile form factor and the patterns that work for it. Being intentional about which features, new features we added and how many, and also choosing breaking points for the design patterns that were put in place. And I used this principle of scalability thinking about our payment selection flow. So on the register, we have a couple different payment options, and those are presented in this grid format. And on the mobile phone, that didn't work. One, it was taking up too much space, and also with other actions that had to happen on that mobile screen, it was just not going to work for that form factor. And so I pivoted from that pattern to a drop down. And really, would we have 20 payment options? No. We had 3 going out the door, and max that would have been maybe 6 payment options. And so setting that breakpoint and using that pattern and thinking about scalability, it wasn't just about, it helped us really to think about, when this app grows, do these patterns work? And coming up from that bigger register form factor, when we implement certain things on the mobile phone, how does that scale down and how does it work specifically for that form factor?
Justina, when I hear your story and I hear how you turned the last couple of years into an adventure, to use your word, what I also hear is that a group of individuals came together as a team to make this all possible. How did your partnership with Zeppelin play a role?
Yes, so it was an amazing experience working with the team. Talech Mobile had to be supported on multiple platforms. So we had dedicated Android devs and dedicated iOS devs. We were also building with different theming. And doing this in a time crunch, there had to be a lot of communication and coordination between the team. And, it was a new team. We had to get to know each other, learn our communication styles, how we came to decisions, and how we talk to each other as well. And when I used to think of portability in just system terms, it's like, okay, how does this work on these different platforms? How do we get components up? But this applied to the team as well when we were making design decisions. And it really was about having an inclusive space where everyone would be able to participate and share ideas and make updates. So in 2019, we were distributed, and some conversations would happen in pockets until we had like maybe 1 or 2 moments where we met face to face. But after that, we were a fully remote team working on this together. So when we moved to that remote platform, it became this tool where everyone could share ideas every day. And many people across the org also use Zeppelin. Like the devs would come in and inspect designs as they were published, get those platform specific assets, could speak to them in their language in Zeppelin. And we also used the style guides to show early components. If I picked a component, if I was changing something that was different from register, they were able to look at that and inspect it and chat with me about it. The product team could pull screenshots for demos for compliance and other stakeholders. And our QA team as well, we were very much hand in hand, I would say, in that point, checking for design quality and design discrepancies. And so being able to double check things on Zeppelin and report them in Jira, it worked as this sort of like constant engine for us as a team getting this out the door like we did at that time. And even now, when we have new people join, when we have designers, devs, QA, or whoever, Zeppelin's working as that documentation repository for us, like a record of our past decisions. And when we make updates, being able to look back and iterate. And it really is that tool that's accessible for everyone.
Justina, when I hear about these experiences, and as I'm reflecting on your story, I've learned that when you're dealing with a lot of change, it helps to have a defined approach and a set of guiding principles.
Yeah, and that change response should be dynamic. It shouldn't be
Mm,
reactionary or short sighted. And design decisions don't happen in a vacuum. And so it's important to create that space for everyone on the team to engage and provide their opinions and share their insights as well.
well put, Justina. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your framework with us. I've learned so much not only about the importance of engaging with your team, but also how your framework can be applied by anyone listening.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. I hope my experience has jolted some new insights for everyone at this summit.
Any final thoughts or shout outs to share before we wrap up, Justina?
Yes, two things. So I believe that creativity should be nurtured in and out of the workplace. So one thing I'm doing this month with a couple of friends is this Wreck This Journal by Carrie Smith, and it's a bunch of creative challenges. So my task to everyone is to find a creative challenge and to pursue that. If it's just like small, short forms, just ways to express yourself and to, yeah, to really get creative. And if there are any questions, if anyone has insights of their own that they'd like to share with me, I'd love to hear it. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you again, Justina. And to everyone in our audience for joining us. Take care and enjoy the rest of the summit.